Hey viewers, today we're going to look at different ways of saving workbooks using VBA. Now they each have different behavior and serve different purposes. So we'll start off with a simple one, the save method. Now this doesn't have any parameters, it just saves any changes to an open workbook without changing any of its properties such as the path, file name or format. Now in this example, we are saving this workbook, the one that's running the macro. It's the same as clicking on the save icon here or the corresponding save icon in Excel. All right, so I'll make a couple of changes and then run the macro to save it. And I'll highlight this in red. Right, I haven't clicked save. I'm just going to run the macro to do it for me. F5 will run this subroutine. And it's finished. Now if I close the workbook, it shouldn't prompt me to save because I've already done that. Reopen the workbook. It saved the red font and the comment that I added. Next, we're going to apply the save method to a new workbook that this macro is going to create. I'll explain the code in a moment. I'll just uncomment it. So first line of code, workbooks.add creates the new workbook and assigns it to this variable WB. And it's defined up the top as a workbook. After that, I'm just going to make simple change to the active sheet, which is the first sheet. So we're going to set the value of B5 with this text and then just zoom that sheet in. Now, once I've made those changes, the macro is going to save the new workbook and then close it. Now, unlike the previous example where we saved this workbook, it already existed. It had defined path, file name, and file format. Now, when you use a save method on a new workbook, it's going to use defaults for those three properties. Now, in my case, the default path is C users username documents. Yours might be different. And the workbook is going to be book 1, 2, 3, and so on .xlsx. So whatever is the next available number inside that default path. And the default format is a standard non-macro enabled workbook. Now, rather than run the entire subroutine in one go, I'm going to step through it line by line using the debugger, and that way you can see what's going on. Now, if you're not familiar with it, please check out my video on how to use the debugger in VBA. It's a very useful tool, not just for troubleshooting, but also helps you validate your code as you're building it out, and you don't have to wait till the very end when you're finished. It's also an extremely useful tool for learning. I'm going to add a breakpoint here so the code execution will stop here. Press F5. Now, this line of code is going to create a new workbook. So F8 will run just that line of code. And here is our new workbook. As you can see, it's created it with book 2 because I already have book 1 in that folder. Now I'm just going to make changes to B5 and then zoom in, and I can just show you what it's done. Here we go. B5's got this value and it's zoomed in. That's not that important. The important thing is the save. So what it's going to do now is save to the default path. And I can just show you, if you come down, Control G will open this immediate window. If you don't have that, click on View up the top and then Immediate Window. All right, so question mark is print or display wb.path. And you'll see it is blank. We haven't saved it yet. So now when I save, so F8, if I do that again, now we have the path. All right. So the workbook still exists. It's been saved. And then close it. F8. And the workbook has been closed. So if I go to the main macro, click on View, switch windows up here. And there's only one workbook open. It's closed the book 2. Now, what if you don't want to use the defaults? Well, for that, you need to use save as method. So this subroutine is going to create a new workbook and save it using a specific path, file name, and file format. Whenever you save, if the file name already exists in that folder, VBA is going to ask the user whether to override or not. Now, if you don't want that prompt, you can force it to always override by default, application.displayalerts equal to false. If you do want the prompt, just leave that line of code out. You can set it to true, but that is the default anyway. Next, create a new workbook as we did before and make some changes to it. Now this is where it differs from the save method. We're going to define a path, subfolder, and a file name to use for this new workbook. I'm using this workbook's path, output subfolder, and the file name is saveas1.xlsx. Next you do WB, so the new workbook.saveas, file name, and then here is the file format that we're going to use. This workbook is a macro-enabled workbook, but I want the new one to be just a standard workbook, so an XLSX. So we use Excel file format dot Excel open XML workbook. Now there are quite a few other options. If you delete that, press the dot. You can see quite a few of them here. I'm not going to go through them. There's far too many of them. Once it's saved, you can then close the workbook. Now, if you make any changes, if the macro does anything else in between the save as and the close, then you'll want to save it. So do true. But since we've done the save already and I'm not making any more changes in between, I'll just leave it as false, or you could even just leave it as a default. And then restore the display alerts. As before, we're going to use the debugger so we can see what's happening. F5 will run and pause at this line of code. So F8, create a new workbook. We now have book 3 by default because I already have 1 and 2. Now I'm going to make some changes. And B5, and I've zoomed in. Now if I have to come to the immediate window, print file name. This is the path, output, save as 1.xlsx. And now I'm going to do the save as. So if I just do that part, I haven't closed the workbook yet. Let's go to the folder, have a look at the output, and it's saved, save as 1.xlsx. Come back to the code, we're going to close the workbook and no need to save it and reset that. So that's done. So this is how you would save a new workbook with a specific path, file name, and format. Now, what if you wanted to make a copy of this workbook, so this macro? Now, why would you want to do that? Well, one example would be, let's say this macro makes lots of changes, brings in data from different systems. The user may want to make a backup before they start making any changes. Another reason might be that the macro pulls in data for different accounts or different departments, let's say, and consolidates it. And then you need to make a copy of the macro for each account or each department, but excluding data that's not relevant to them. So what you could do is make a copy and then delete the data that's not applicable to that account or that department, and then repeat for each one. To create a copy of this workbook, the first thing that comes to mind is to use the save as method. However, this does have a drawback, and that is, if you do save as on this workbook, it will create you the copy, but it's also going to close the original workbook, leaving the copy open and active. So let's demonstrate this. So for the file name, it's going to be the same path and subfolder. File name will be save as 2.xlsm. This workbook.save as, file name, and this workbook.file format, because I want it to use the same format as this workbook. Once again, use the debugger. So when we do the save as, it's going to create this file. I'll go over to Excel and zoom in all the way up here. You can see the workbook is save as 2.xlsm. Come over to, and let's have a look at the windows. So view, switch windows. There's only one workbook open and it's save as 2. So the original has been closed. Right, so let me close this and open the original. We'll go to the outputs folder. Here is our save as 2. And that's the original. All right. So instead of using save as to create the copy, we're going to use save copy as. Similar path. The file name is going to be save copy as. So this workbook dot save copy as and the file name. Right, back over to Excel. This is the original file. Have a look at the windows. The only one open is the original. The copy has not been opened. It's just been created and saved. Let's have a look at the output folder. And here is our save copy as. And if I double click on it, enable macros, it's created the copy. We can have a look up the top, save copy as. If I go to view and switch windows, you'll see both of them are open. So that's how you would make a copy of a workbook. Up till now, we've used specific path and file name. But what if the user wants to select their own? Well, in that case, we can use the save as dialog. So let's have a look at the code. As per previous examples, we can override the prompt, create a new workbook, and make some changes to it. So that's no different to what we did in earlier examples. Next, we can set the initial state of the dialog. So the initial file name and path. I'm going to use this workbook path and output subfolder as previously. And the file name is save as 3.xlsx. Again, this is just the initial path and file name. The user will be able to change that. You can also add filters, so the dialog only shows specific file types. In my case, I've added Excel files and all files. And I'll show you that when we see the dialog. So this line here is going to pop up the dialog box. So application, get save as file name, initial file name, that's the parameter name, equals to init name that we defined up here. File filters equals filters, which we defined here. And then filter index equals 1. So it's going to default to the first one in the list. Save name is going to hold the value of the selected path and file name. Now, if the user cancels, it's going to return the value false. When the user selects a file, it's going to be a string. Otherwise, it's going to be a Boolean if it's false. So it's defined as a variant. I'll set the breakpoint here, and I'll come back to this code in a moment. Let's take a look at the dialog first. So F5, here's our save as dialog. Default path is the output subfolder, and default file is save as 3. Here are our filters, Excel files, and all files. So the user can change the file name and the path. But first, I'm just going to cancel. Right, so since the user cancelled, save name should equal false. So print save name false. Good. So the code is going to drop into here. F8, close the workbook without saving, and pop up a message, save as has been cancelled. Right. And I'll just run the rest of the code. Now I'm going to rerun it, but this time select the path and file name. F5 again. Same save as dialog, defaulting to the output subfolder. Now the user comes along, changes it to save as 4. Instead of saving to output, they select the parent folder and click save. Right. So save name now contains the parent folder, save as 4.xlsx. It hasn't saved it yet. I'm going to drop into this bit of code, new workbook, so wb.saveas, the save name, and the standard Excel workbook. You could use this if you want a macro enabled one, but you'd have to change the extension up the top here to XLSM. Right, so let's save it and close. Then display the message and it's finished. So file saved to at the path and the file name. And if we go over to the parent folder, you'll see that the file has been saved there. Here is save as 4. So that's all the save methods I wanted to cover. If you found this useful, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.